So you want to do a starch conversion, but you're not sure how to go about it. Let me go show you my method using malted grain and a 90-minute cook. Hey everyone, Distiller Greyling here, one of your favorite home and hobby distillers. So in this video I'm going to do a starch conversion using malted grain, and I'm going to use my method for a 90-minute cook. What does that mean? I'm going to use some malted barley that I've already pre-mulled beforehand. I'm also going to use a 90-minute cook. What I'm going to do there is I'm going to take my malted barley, get it in my pot, and I'm going to keep it at one constant temperature for 90 minutes, an hour and 30 minutes. After that, I will then start to do my starch test, straining, and get it into my fermenter. So at this moment, what I have got so far is, yes, I've got my malted barley mulled already. Go check out this video where I did some milling comparison. It was quite interesting. In my pot, I also already got my water. I use a ratio of 1 kilogram barley to a 2.5 to 3 liters of water. So in here I've got about 60 liters of water ready. I had it heat up already earlier today. My temperature now is about 66 degrees Celsius. I'm looking at a strike temperature of 72 degrees Celsius. If you want to know more about strike temperature, go check out my video of starch conversion back to basics. There I also explain it nicely, as well as leaving some strike calculators down at the bottom. What I'm going to do is going to get my malted barley into the pot after the strike temperature, stir it as I go, bring down the temperature to 65 degrees. That's hopefully will happen as I add the malted barley, and then I will cook it for 1 hour and 30 minutes, keeping the temperature constant at 65 degrees. If it goes a bit low, I will crank up the heat a bit. If I see it goes too low, I can even stop the heat completely. Maybe just open it a little small bit, but we will see as we go. Normally I saw that I've got a gas burner at the bottom that's got 2 rings. Normally if I just play with the middle ring and just dial it down a bit, it keeps the temperature there, but we'll play around with it. Talking about the gas, on my pot, I do not really have a nice system at the moment, but I use bricks. Got a cement floor here in the garage, so I got 3 bricks that the pot's on, and then I've got 1 brick where I've got my double burner as well on. It works brilliantly for me. Got my gas hooked up. Might decide later to make a nice stand, but for now it works for me. So yes, let me get this temperature up some more, and then we'll take it when we're on strike temperature. Alright, I got it on strike temperature. I'm at about 72 degrees. So I'm slowly going to add the malted barley as I keep on stirring. You want to add it a bit slowly and stir it to make sure it doesn't make lumps. Sometimes it can even be a dry lump on the inside. So I'm going to start adding it and stirring it. So yes, I just add it slowly, and I make sure that I stir it as I add it. I will add the 25 kg until everything is in. Check what the temperature is. It's supposed to be around 65 degrees then. And then from there I will start to cook it for my hour and 30 minutes. If my arm gets a bit tired, I will use my drill as well. The drill itself's got a paint mixer on the front. It works brilliantly, especially when you're doing starch conversion when you had to add some enzymes and it get really thick. That paint mixer helps a lot. But yes, so now I'm just going to be adding until everything is in, and I'll see you guys when everything is in again. All the grain is in. I've been stirring it with the drill every now and again. I'm just checking for consistency at the moment, making sure there's no lumps inside. I don't feel anything. Feeling at the bottom as well, nothing has burned on so far. Still everything is going good. Actually got about a 65.4 degrees on my temperature. So I have dialed down the heat a bit. Also the strike temperature worked brilliantly as I'm on the temperature that I wanted. I will definitely now start my cook for my 90 minutes or my hour and a half. Keeping it at this heat. I will also place on the lid. The lid definitely helps holding the temperature there, so you don't have to constantly add heat, and it doesn't evaporate away all the necessary water that's still in here. So yes, give it an hour and a half to cook. After that I will do a small starch test just to see how things are going, and then after that we will get all our malted barley into my strainer, strain it out, and then ferment it. Alright, the 90 minutes has passed, my hour and a half is gone. I've been checking the temperature every 10 to 15 minutes. If I see the temperature goes up a bit too high, close a bit on the heat and I give it a good stir. Stirring helps to bring the temperature down if your heat is very low. If the temperature goes down too much, I then crank it up again, leave it, don't stir it for a while, and see that the temperature comes up. If my temperature hovers around 66, 67, I'm also happy. You're not too worried keeping it at 65 constant the whole time. Just don't go above, say, 70 degrees. Try and keep it in that 65 to 70 degree band. But yeah, at the moment I can see it's about 66, almost 68. 66.8, almost 67. So for now, I will do a small starch test to just check how it looks. I got my cooling coil ready as well. Drop it in and then I'll start cooling. I can definitely see that there's still a bit of foam here, meaning that it had cooked, and I'm quite happy. Just want to stir it through. I can also feel it is much looser, or the viscosity is much smoother. When I just added everything together initially, it was quite thick, so it tells me that there was starch conversion. There was a time where it was gelatinized, and because it's got natural enzymes, the malted grain, it has liquefied as well. So definitely I'm quite happy. Let me just get my plate here. Now for a starch test, you don't want to scoop out a big bunch of grain. I just want a little bit, as I just want to see, is there still starch left or not. If there is starch left, you might want to cook it a bit more, say another 30 minutes. If you see there's no black and the iodine stays at a neutral color, then you know, yes, your starch conversion was quite successful. I just use normal iodine as my starch indicator, nothing too fancy. Just want to take it out and just drip it. See, I can't even see that it is changing color. Then I know I'm happy. Yes, so I'm quite happy with my starch conversion as it is now. Next step is to cool it down. My cooling coil is a bit on the small side, especially for this size pot. It is because I normally use it with my stainless steel bucket. That's when it was still fairly new and I had it at a very small volumes. I'm talking about 15 to 20 liters maximum. So obviously, yes, this coil is a bit small for the spot, but it works and I'm quite happy with it. It definitely cools down much faster using the cooling coil than I would just plainly leave it to let it cool down by itself. So the cooling coil, to give a small idea, is cooling water comes in at the bottom and the cooling will go all the way on the top and then exit with the red. So at the moment the garage is next to the garden, so I can just dump the excess or the spent water to the garden. So definitely try and save some water. If you can use it gardening, it's a good idea. If you don't have a place to really store it or dump it in the drain. That's what it is. So yes, you will see I do got duct tape on here as well. My two valves, needle valves, they slide perfectly onto the cooling coil. I had ones where it actually slipped off and it was splashing water all over. So I tend to use a bit of duct tape just to make sure it's nice and secure. That's what, from my past experience, what I've seen. So I'm going to crank open the water and then I can hear it start to flow. And then I want to see, make sure everything is connected nicely. I can definitely feel, yes, cool water is definitely coming in. And yes, I can definitely feel how the heat is being removed out of the pot by the cooling water, and this side on my left hand side is definitely getting hotter. So yes, I am cranking it up a bit more to make sure that the water can flow nicely and freely. Then what I tend to do, I also stir, I'll drop in the drill as well, keep continuously stirring. My aim now is to bring it down to about 40 degrees Celsius. When I do my straining with my spindle, I see that around 40 degrees is the perfect temperature. At the end, you want your fermentation or your wash to be basically the same temperature as your yeast. You can push it about 10 degrees hotter or warmer than your yeast, but you will maybe shock your yeast as you pitch it. So I tend to bring down my wash because I know ambient temperature today is about 28, 27 degrees. It's quite hot here today. So if I bring it down to 40 or even to the high 35 degrees, then I definitely know my yeast will not shock if I pitch it. So I'm obviously still going to strain and sparge, so it will obviously still come down as we do that as well. But for now, I'm just going to cool it down, cranking up the water. I can definitely feel it's getting nice and hot. Stir it as I go, and I want to bring it down to 40 degrees Celsius. Alright, I've cooled it down to about 40 degrees Celsius. I'm quite happy. Also disconnected the pipes on my cooling coil. As you can see, the size comparison to the pot is quite small, but like I said, it works perfectly for me for now. So yes, I'll get my cooling coil a bit cleaned up, just shake it off a bit, get most of the solid particles off, and then I will get the pot to outside. I've seen that straining especially sometimes get a bit messy, and I like to do it outside. If I do make a mess, it's easier just to clean it off with the hose. Then inside here is inside a garage, there's cabinets and whatever inside, so no, I'm going to take everything outside, just outside the door. We'll also then get the spindle out so that I can show you guys exactly how I strain and also how I sparge. So yeah, let's get going. Alright guys, I am outside, nice in the sun, it's nice and hot outside. So I've got my pot, about, I don't know, we'll see how much is in there. Got my old pot with all the grain that I've been cooking now for the 90 minutes at 40 degrees Celsius, maybe a bit less. Yeah, I've got my spindle closed dryer. In the video where I talked about Starch version equipment, I explain a bit more exactly what this is, but basically it's just a clothes dryer that you actually use to dry some clothes, but I use it for straining out my grain. I've got my bucket where I'm going to collect my watery mash that comes out of the spindle. Make sure my tap is closed at the bottom. At about 15 liter increments, then I transfer it into my 100 liter fermenter, which I will then push back inside and get ready to ferment. So for now, let's get going. So my first training that I did was via hand. I used to take my wash with the spent grain still inside, get it into a straining bag or a cloth, and then I would squeeze it out. It quite took some time, and then on a suggestion of someone, I got a spindle like this. For home and hobby distilling, it works perfectly. If you're going up to more commercial and you're going for larger and bigger volumes, this might be a little bit too small, and obviously you got equipment that's got either a type of sparging or lautering already built inside the equipment. That also helps a lot. So for me, this works brilliantly. I have a clothes bag that I basically use. I hang it to the one side, and then I add about 6 liters of my wash inside, close it up, and then I spin it. Some of the liquid already comes out at the bottom. That's no problem. That's why I put the bucket there in the first place. I'm going to switch it on, hold on tight, and let's get it going. As it starts off, it sometimes might be a bit off balance, but as soon as it gets to speed, it balances out quite nicely, and then I just leave it. I tend to look at how much liquid still comes out. If it starts to get a bit less, I tend to tilt it a bit forward, and this is how I strain out my grain. Nice and easy. You still get a bit of messy transferring it from the pot to the spindle, but it's much better than using my hand, and it's also much quicker for me. Now I want to talk about sparging. Now, sparging for me, It's important because you get a little bit more sugar out. So now inside you do got your spent grain in the bag that I have, my closed bag, but there might be still some sugars still trapped on that spent grain, and if you're just going to throw it away you might miss it or waste it. So what I tend to do is I've got my fancy sparging bottle. It's just basically a bottle with a nice nozzle on top that I actually use to water plants. But I use this as a sparging vessel or sparging tool. It's got normal water inside at the moment, so I tend to sparge maybe say 250 to about 300 mils of water. I just try to get it wet and see that I at least soak whatever's still left in here, and with that it's still in the bag, still inside the spindle. I just close it up and I get it going again. Might not be a lot, but it's still pushing out some water. Obviously you can see the color is also a bit lighter than the initial one, but that's now still a bit of sugars that I want to ferment, that I want to get converted into nice alcohol that I want to distill. For my sparging run, I tend to let it run a bit longer, as I want to make sure I try to get as much moisture out of the spent grain as possible. After that, I will just empty the closed bag into my spent grain bag, and that I will dispose of a bit later. So I will continue like this now until the pot is done. Like I said, I will fill it up to make about 15 liters, then transfer it to my drum. The reason why I do that is for note taking. I want to know exactly how much liquid I'm going to put into my fermenter. So at 15 liter increments I can add up nicely and it's much easier. Also, I don't want to pick up the spindle too high to get it to drain directly into the bigger fermenter. This setup here works for me nicely. So let me continue and I'll talk to you guys when I'm almost done. That is it for now. Got about 63 liters out, so I'm quite happy. The pot is empty as well. It's now just time for some cleanup. That's always the fun part. So yes, let me get some things cleaned up outside. Move this guy inside so that we can set it up for fermentation, and then I can get out of the sun as well. I am in the garage. Got my fermenter, my dolly trolley, moving around nicely again. Well, it's a bit heavy, so it's not moving so freely, but it's on the dolly. So for now, I want to measure temperature, I want to measure sugar content again, get my pH ready, pitch my yeast and nutrients, get the lid on. I've already fastened my aquarium heater onto the lid, so I know that one is set up. Get everything in, and then we'll start to ferment. So for now, I'm just going to do a bunch of measurements, and I'll get back to you. So I'm basically done for now. I've tested my sugar. I've got about 21 bricks out of the 63 liters. It's okay. It is still a bit hot. I still got it at 35 degrees Celsius. So it can be that my hydrometer is only calibrated for 20 degrees. So it might be that I'm reading a low reading, but if I take it to 20 degrees, it might come up a bit. But I'm fairly fine with the 21. I know I've been sparging, so I know I diluted it as well a bit, so I'm fine. I'm not too worried about the 21 bricks. pH was on the low side, it was a 5.1, so I added some potassium carbonate to bring it up. I took it to 6.4 degrees, pH of 6.4. I like it, the range that's here near to 6.5 pH, so 6.4 I'm quite happy with as well. I've added my yeast nutrients. I added less nutrients than yeast itself. It's more about that the grain itself already has got nutrients. I don't want to over nutrient it. So nutrients is in. Also got my yeast in. I got about 65 grams of yeast in as well. And that is it for now. Got my heater connected. So I'm just going to play around now with the height where I want it. So I'm just going to loosen my electrical socket a bit here, and then push it inside until I'm happy that the heater itself is submerged. You don't want the heater to be outside it can actually burn because it's going to overheat and not be submerged. So there I see it, it's submerged. I will close it up and connect the plug, and I've got my bubbler as well. Add bubbler and seal my drum. So that is it for my starch conversion. I didn't focus too much on the fermentation as it's more about the starch conversion that I did in the pot and the straining out bit. So this will now ferment hopefully for 10 days or so, and then we'll get it distilling. Thank you guys for watching. As always, remember to be awesome, to be kind, and be yourself. Cheers.